What happened to my TV? My contacts are wearing out. If it wiggles just a little bit, the connection goes off.
What contacts?
That goes from the plug from the TV to the computer.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to figure out some other way to do that, or else get something different. Because if you just touch it, it goes bad. Okay, that's today's computer problem. There always seems to be a new one.
Yep.
Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this rainy day. Really desperately needed rain. I think it won't slow the harvest down too much. Seems like they're doing pretty good. And just a side light, I drive from Greenville to Richmond pretty consistently on 121, and I think I've seen 2 hopper wagons in that entire time. I've seen 50 semis and 50 grain carts bigger than the entire road, bigger than my garden shed. And when I was farming, of course that was years and years ago, everybody had, you may find 2 or 3 hopper wagons hooked together and hauling them back to your farm.
Not anymore.
But not anymore. There's no small farms left. There's no small farmers left. And I'm not regretting change, because change is necessary and progress is necessary, but we are losing something in this country. I follow some different dairy farmers in Wisconsin on Facebook, and these are farmers that are milking 100 cows, and they said yesterday there is 1 farm every day going out of business, one dairy farm in Wisconsin every day going out of business, more than 300 farms. And the milk is not disappearing, the cows are not disappearing, but instead of 1 farm with 100 cows, or 10 farms with 100 cows, you have 1 farm with 1,000 cows, or 1 farm with 5,000 cows. And these farms, when you watch these guys and they're on their little Facebook thing, each cow has a name. That's the way ours, every cow had a name, every cow had a personality. Every cow was treated as an individual. This guy I particularly like. When his cows get old, if they've been good producers, he just retires them. He lets them stay and feeds them until they die a natural death, and they can't make it anymore, just like you would for your pet dog or whatever else. So
instead of 2 hopper wagons, you got 2 semis now.
Yep. So it's just I guess an old person's passing interest of note as life goes along. All right, any announcements? The Sunday after Thanksgiving, we're going to do a joint service in El Dorado. It'll be a pitch-in, as Derek calls it. So feel free to bring something, but it's not necessary. They always have more than they need. And it'll be good to hear Derek again. We haven't seen much of him lately since he's got his new job. All right. Our prelude is If Ever I Would Leave You. If Ever I Would Leave You, poignant song. All right, our scripture reading this morning is Luke 21, I'm only doing verses 1 to 2. And he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury, and he saw also a poor widow putting in 2 mites. Does everybody know what a mite is? We'll be discussing mites as we go along. And our connection, let's see, what was my next one? Oh, actually, I can show you right now. These are mites. The Gospel of Mark specifies that 2 mites, which are in Greek is the lepta, are together worth a quadrans, the smallest Roman coin. A lepton was the smallest and least valuable coin in circulation in Judea, worth about 6 minutes of an average daily wage. 6 minutes of an average daily wage that's what this widow put in. We will be discussing the circumstances surrounding the poor giving and the rich taking. So that's going to be the concentration of what we're talking about. We're challenge lighting the great turning. In these wild, historic, and uncertain times, we gather to remember who we are, who we belong to, and what we are called to do. As we light this chalice, we kindle the spirit of the great turning. The movement for justice is alive in this nation today. May we feel it in our bones, and in the stillness of this hour, may we sense it calling our name. That's by Lisa Garcia Sampson. I took part in the demonstration, the No Kings demonstration, which was nationwide in Greenville. We had about 150 people. They had about 500 in Troy, which was pretty amazing from what I could see. Did you go to Troy?
Aunt Lou and Denise were there.
Oh, okay. We had a speaker at the women's meeting. Technically it's a women's meeting, but men are invited, which is why I was there. Wednesday at Shawnee Prairie. Everybody's invited to that if they want to come. It's the basically it's the Democrat, Republican, and Independent women's group of Dark County. And their particular mission is they prepare, there's a name for it, kits, temporary kits, or basically it's for the girls who are going to school, like junior high and high school, that don't have the necessary sanitary, like napkins and tampons. They put these kits together and set them into the school for the school nurse to hand out for anybody who needs them. That's their project. So we made 500 kits last Wednesday. I didn't stay to help do that. I had other stuff to do. But what I was going with, they had the speaker, Adam Miller, is running for Congress. We're not really sure what the districts are going to be, so he could be up in our district or he could be farther east. But he is a very dynamic speaker. I would encourage. He had a presentation from Troy. He was at the Troy demonstration. I would encourage you to follow if you see his name, follow his information, and maybe stay behind him if you can. Speaking on politics, anybody know what else is happening today? It is the Republican gathering at the fairgrounds, free meal, and then speakers afterwards. So I'm going up and I wouldn't say infiltrate, but I want to see what's going on, and I would never turn down a free meal anyway. But I would like to hear what they have to say after listening to them call about the No Kings thing as the Hate America gatherings, which couldn't be farther from the truth. We had one Trump demonstrator there. He was waving his flag, and every time somebody would drive by and honk their horns in support, he would give them the individual finger salute. And he didn't really cause any trouble other than that. And I talked to him on the way out, and it is a sad commentary on the lives of people who are in this condition. He's a lonely, embittered, alienated guy who is losing what he considers his America. And what he does is listen to Fox News, so he blames the Democrats and the transgender, and he blames everybody but the people who are actually taking the money away from him. We agreed, we shook hands and agreed that we both had allegiance to the Constitution and parted as friends. And I kind of chided him a little bit because he was there with his American flag and nobody could see his Trump hat. So he just basically added to the demonstrators that were demonstrating against Trump. So And that's why he finally left. He realized that he wasn't having much of an impact. But it was just the talking to this gentleman who was basically, in what I consider the conservatives in Dark County, they're nice people. They will help anybody as an individual. They just have this formed picture that's been planted in their minds of the evil that's causing the trouble for the United States, and it's a misplaced picture. And I still don't have, and I still haven't found a way to reach these people. He and I talked, but he didn't change my mind, and I certainly didn't change his mind. But at least we kept the lines of communication open. Okay, we're kind of wandering off, but that's pretty much what we're going to be doing, talking about today anyway. Opening hymn is 35, Until Thy Temple, Lord, We Come. And the great and small, large as thy love forever, evermore, and warm and bright and good to all. That's a special thanks to Lloyd, because he's picking hymns, and he's the one that picks them, match the message, the common home of rich and poor. That's what we're talking about today, the common home of rich and poor. Our affirmation: it is my prayer this morning that we heed the words etched on that statue. We're talking the Statue of Liberty. That we have a country where these words apply to everyone, not just some. Where our hearts are open and our door stands ajar. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. May it be, and may we make it so. Deuteronomy 10, 18, 19, love the stranger. And that quote was the New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. And that is what is printed on the Statue of Liberty. Still, it has not been stricken off, papered over, but I see those days coming. All right, joys and concerns. Glad to have Dolly and Cecil here today with us. Missing all of our other members who used to be able to come, either for health or business reasons or whatever, not able to come. We hope they are doing well, and any contact they would give us, that would be gratefully appreciated. Anything else? All right, Israel and Hamas, even though there's a truce, it does not seem to be a very stable truce. Israel is bombing Gaza again, 29 or 30 people killed yesterday. They say the Gaza or the Hamas is firing at them. I've not heard anybody corroborate that, but it would not surprise me. The big contention is the Gazans are not, or the Hamas is not returning the deceased hostages. That was explained at the very beginning of the peace process. Many of those hostages were killed by Israel when they bombed the tunnels, and the tunnels are buried. The Israelis have blown up and destroyed all the mechanical diggers, the backhoes, the trenchers, all the equipment it takes to dig it out, and none of that is left. So how are the Palestinians supposed to retrieve the bodies? So once again, when people go into negotiations, they go in with more or less a closed mind, and they have rigged the negotiations in their own direction. Both sides do it, but we may not see a time of calm and a time of peace. We may just have a temporary truce. Israel is still not allowed the supplies to go in to the West Bank. So children are still starving, people are still without food, without medical supplies, without even gas to cook their food on. So not a good situation. Ukraine, not much of a change there. We have a transactional leadership in the administration that wants to trade one thing for another and can't quite seem to get the two sides to agree what to trade. So the fighting goes on there. We have to light a candle for anybody who was in a small boat in the Mediterranean or the Caribbean Sea. Number 6 has been blown up. Interestingly enough, for these being drug smugglers and terrorists, there were 2 survivors this time. Did you hear what happened to the survivors? They were not arrested and brought back for trial as people who are invading the United States. They were returned to their home country. You have to ask, why would 2 people invading the United States be returned to their home country?
Yeah.
The only answer I'm coming up with is if there was a trial and we found out that they were not from Venezuela, and we found out that they were a fishing boat or whatever else, it would look bad. I have to thank the heavens that they didn't just let them lay in the sea and drown, which is what I would expect from an administration that shoots unarmed boats from the sky without asking them to stop, without trying to take them in control, which is what the past history used to be. They just would send the Navy or the Coast Guard, intercept them and arrest them and confiscate the drugs and send them to prison. That is not the case that we're doing now. We are basically, anybody who's on the ocean that we suspect, we blow them out of the water. So, all right. Anything else?
It's like a candle for those organizing the opportunity for us to express our concerns about the future of America. That takes organizational skills, and they're out there doing it. We could see that from the response that we had yesterday and beyond. And let's hope for lack of a better word, I think, at least I speak personally, the experience helps me feel a little better that there are others who have similar concerns. It gives me hope that at least our experience with democracy, we are able to continue to do that, as well as express our concerns and support the cause for, let's say, just for lack of a better word, turning America around a bit.
Silence is not, and I've heard people say, and I know people do, it's too troublesome, it's too worrisome, it's too exasperating. I'm just going to turn the news off and not watch it. That is exactly how Germany ended up where it was in 1939, 1940. Decent people. We talked about Bonhoeffer when they came for the communists. I did not say anything. I did not stand up. When they came for the trade unionists, I did not say anything. I did not stand up. When they came for the other religions, the Protestant religions, I did not say anything, and I just did not stand up. When they came for me, there was nobody left to stand up. We have to be active. We have to be aware of what's going on. It doesn't take much. There are many, many ways you can contribute a couple dollars. You can put your body on the line. We had a good time. If anybody's interested, I've got pictures of Greenville. We had the dinosaur suit was there. The frog costume was there. These people there were 3 or 4 or 5 different costumes. We had music. People were dancing in the streets. It was a good time. Also, every police car in Greenville was there. I counted 5 police cars. That had to be all of them for Greenville, and 5 officers standing around. But there was no problem. And I talked to a couple of them. They were friendly.
Their demeanor was very positive, and I thought that they certainly didn't detract from the demonstration at all.
No, they did not try to intimidate anybody. They just kind of walked through. And I think the people there know that they were there, that a big parade in Washington, D.C. that was also coincided with Trump's birthday. There were 6 or 7 Trump supporters demonstrating at the circle in Greenville. And I think I told you that story. I got out with my sign and walked up to this group, because they all had American flags, and held my sign up, which said, "Happy birthday, President Bone Spurs," and had a picture of a giant skeleton of a foot as a parade item. And it took me a few minutes, because then I noticed that they were all wearing guns. And I'm thinking, that does not look like Democrats. So I asked one of them, I said, what does your sign say? And it was some kind of pro-Trump thing. And I said, oh, I think I'm in the wrong place. And they said, we don't have any, it's like the same thing. Everybody's free to speak. They were very polite, very friendly. And I talked to them for a while before I went over and got into a little bit of warmer group. But they were not intimidating or unfriendly at all. But that wasn't the case in all the cases. There were many people that would drive around the circle with their windows down, screaming obscenities at the demonstrators. And a sad thing. But this guy that I talked to. These people are mad at the world because of what the world is doing to them, and they're being told to focus on the wrong causes of what's going wrong. Their medicine they're buying is going up, their rents are going up, their income is going down, their lives are getting more complicated and less safe, and they're mad. They don't know who to be mad at, but their anger has been harnessed and directed in what we think is the wrong direction. But how to turn that around we haven't figured that out yet. So, okay. So we light one final candle for all those misguided, but honest, caring, loving people who are headed in the wrong direction. Hopefully, we can find a way to change their direction and bring the common people back to support for what America really stands for. All right, children's story. How many of you remember Sierra Burton? She was the police officer from Richmond. Had only been on the force for a couple of years, was getting married in like 4 or 5 weeks. Just a standard traffic stop. And the person they stopped was mentally unstable, who had a gun, which is one of the problems that we face in this country. Is people who shouldn't have guns, and got a gun and shot her in the head, and she died 4 or 5 weeks later. The reason I bring this up is the widow's mite. We'll see if this will.
Inside the envelope, 8 crumpled up $1 bills and a note that read, "People from the street." He accepted a hug, but insisted on no other recognition.
The man didn't give his name, but he said Officer Berger was kind and would often check in on the homeless. So he took up a collection and got donations from people on the street, people with virtually nothing to give.
They gave that knowing they don't know if they're going to have another dollar tomorrow.
The widow's mite, in the time of Christ, she gave 2 mites. Some people say 1 mite, the smallest denomination that there was. What she had was what she had to live on. She gave the last that she had. That still continues. Luke 21, 1 through 4, and I'll read the last 3. He said, "Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all. For all these out of their abundance have put in offerings, but for God she out of her poverty put in all the livelihood that she had." Thousands of years pass, but human beings remain essentially the same. Christ watched the widow pass the entitled wealth and their finery and put her mites in the collection plate. We watched a homeless man enter the fortress and offer his mite as an expression of love for someone who had cared for him and his family. He did not want airtime. He did not want exposure. He did not want a GoFundMe account. He did not want the appreciation of his betters. He wanted to say thanks, and we will miss her. Someone who was usually the enemy, but instead had recognized them as worthy of an attempt to help. Sierra had stopped and talked to the homeless. She helped them whenever she could. She did not treat them as the enemy. She did not treat them as something to be trashed, to be moved out from under the bridges. And her reward was to be shot by one of those people. Some men worship rank. Some worship heroes. Some worship power. Some worship God. And over these ideals they dispute, but they all worship money. Some worship rank, heroes, power, God, and they argue over which is the most important, but they all worship money. Who said that? My favorite author, Mark Twain. They all worship money. So as usual, context contains it all. When Luke was writing his inspired gospel account of the first century, there was no more difficult, if not dangerous, life to endure than that of a widow. In the first century world, she and her children would be allowed to live in her deceased husband's home unless she was unable to meet the expenses of the household. She has no income with her husband gone, so where is her expenses to be met? If not, she was virtually destitute unless some family member, like an adult son or friends, took her in, or she married her brother-in-law. Deuteronomy says her children, if she had some, were equally at risk of deprivation and homeless. Deuteronomy says that is the responsibility of the brother-in-law to take in the wife of his brother. If he did not have a brother, and she had no brother-in-law to take her in, then she was basically homeless. Her children, if she had some, were equally at risk of deprivation and homelessness. In the Roman world, the word orphanos, which gives us the word orphan, actually referred to children whose father had died, even if the mother was still living. Even if the mother was still living, these were orphans because they had no means of support. A few centuries later, the word would be used for children without any parents. For a widow living in first century Rome, everything changed her status. Even a change in her apparel was mandated. She had to wear a head covering in public that was folded halfway back on her head to designate her widowhood, the widow's mite. Part of that was to publicly identify her as a widow, and that's because Caesar Augustus demanded that a Roman widow remarry within a year's time so as not to become a burden on Roman society. Women were mandated to remarry within a year because they would not hand out money to the poor, money to the undeserving. Does that sound like we're getting back to Roman times again? A widow would be fine, which, as maybe you haven't heard, the SNAP benefits, because of the shutdown of the government, there will be no SNAP benefits, no SNAP cards issued in November. So everybody who gets the food supply will not have that money coming in November. They will be cut off. Later Caesars in the Roman Empire extended that time period from 1 year to 2 years, such tender-hearted caring for the poor and the homeless, until eventually this policy was permanently discarded. Women were property, just like livestock. To fit the advantage of the family, daughters were traded for favors. Wives were expected to produce an ever-expanding family of workers. The Jewish world was somewhat different. There was no legal penalty for being a widow. In fact, the law of Moses required a special tithe every 3rd year. An additional 10th of all the produce of grain and fruit was to be donated to the needy in their villages and towns, including the widows and orphans. The law decreed that this tithe would be distributed over the next 3 years, so that, as Moses says in Deuteronomy 26, verse 12, so that they may eat within your towns and be satisfied. They also loved, Jesus says here, the best seats in the synagogue, just like you do. Jesus is talking about the rich when he was talking about the rich who put in a small portion of what they owned and expected to be hailed as suppliers and supporters of the synagogue. They also wanted the best seats in the synagogue. Just like us, that's in the back row. The best seats in the synagogue were also considered in the back row. In the synagogue, the best seats were not in the back for these people. They were in the front, but they were turned to face the audience. The rich and powerful sat in the front, like right along here where the choir would sit, so everybody could see their faces. Here they were turned to face the audience, typically located behind the speaker. Here were seated the well-off, the scribes. They tended normally to be the scribes. These seats were closest to the scrolls that would be read during the service, as if to imply these men were closest to God. Finally, Jesus describes them as loving the place of honor at the feasts. This meant they were seated closest to the host family. They were the VIPs of the ancient world. But being a scribe had gone straight to their head. One author writing on this text gives the warning, you cannot encourage the impression that you are great and at the same time exalt a great God. You cannot encourage the impression that you are great. You cannot brag about how great you are and at the same time be a faithful servant of God. Jesus exposes their haughty character, and he's not finished. He now exposes their heartless corruption. That's verse 47. Who devours widows' houses and for a pretense makes long prayers, they will receive the greater condemnation. Luke 20:47. In other words, they're in trouble with God. It's bad enough to rip people off, but to be a scam artist in the name of God is even more vile. And to rip off a widow is about as low as you can go. Jesus says they will face a greater condemnation. Are they praying for the widow or praying for the widow? Are they praying for the widow or praying on the widow? When I say it, it means nothing. When you see it, there is a big difference between praying and praying. One of the fun things of learning another language is the words that are exactly the same but change by context. People would often place their finances in the hand of the scribes. The scribes were legal experts like our lawyers, and people would completely trust them to manage their affairs. The scribes basically started out to be, and you know what the definition of scribe is someone who writes. When you scribble, you're a scribe. They were the ones who transcribed the Torah, or the Old Testament, from one writing to another. They didn't have printing presses back then. These people tended to be the learned, the intelligent, the educated, and they became what we would call now the lawyers of the time. They became the ones who interpreted the Torah along with the priests. They became the ones who were trusted to take care of the finances of the temple. And as is normally the case, people who had questions or had problems with their finances, just like you would go to a lawyer, you went to the scribe. Widows who lost their husbands and had no idea of business or what the ownership was went to the scribes. And as you can see, things have not changed from that time to this. Some of those scribes took advantage of those widows and their property. A widow especially trusted the scribe with the money she would have received from her father's dowry. At the death of her husband, it was all she would have had left. Scribes were not to charge widows for legal counsel, so instead they developed the practice of keeping some of the dowry for themselves. They also accepted money from the widows in exchange for special prayers on their behalf. Does that ring a bell? The scribes accepted money in return for special prayers, since the scribes sat in the chairs closest to God, closest to the Torah. Remember the indulgences that Luther protested against when the rich people of the Middle Ages could buy their way into heaven, according to the Catholic Church. If you committed crimes or offended God, all you had to do is make a contribution to the Vatican, and you were in with no questions asked. Sound familiar? Indulgence, or send in your prayer offering and receive God's abundance. You never heard the prosperity gospel? How many times have you seen on TV, if you watch that, send us your offering and you will be rewarded? Things have not changed in 2,000 years. Jesus is clearly referring to that when he says they are pretending to make long prayers for these widows, but instead are devouring and consuming their money. They weren't praying for them, they were preying on them. Nobody would promise to pray for money, would they? Religious scam artists are everywhere promising people everything if they just send in their money, even the promise to pay. One televangelist who was exposed by a hidden camera made a special plea for money, promised that he would pray for the requests that people sent in along with their money. The hidden cameras showed his staff out by the dumpsters, opening the envelopes, taking out the money, and throwing the prayer requests into the dumpster. Just one of the more literal examples that we know happens. Or the prayer request for a jet aircraft for pilgrimage, those taking all the prosperity gospel. Are you aware of the pastor from the Southern Church that asked his church to contribute so he could get a new jet plane to fly his travels in? Scribes are alive and well. So, was Christ elevating the widow as a picture of grace, giving what little she had for the life of the church, which is the common understanding, and that is used every time with what they wanted to donate, and the pastor or the leader would give a sermon on donating to the church, how important it was, and the widow's mite was always a prime example of that. The widow who had hardly anything gave what it would take for her to live for a week. She gave that to the church out of her loyalty and her faithfulness. Christ was elevating the widow as a picture of grace, giving what little she had for the life of the church, or, this is a new interpretation, to a money-grubbing aristocracy that cared not a whit for her subsistence. Speaking of mite, what is mite? And we went through that, the lepta and the 2 coins. I also saw 6 minutes of the average daily wage, yes. Hers was true devotion, giving all, no different than the homeless people of Richmond, Indiana. The homeless people of Richmond, and if you've driven through Richmond, there used to be a guy that lived under the bridge on 40 there in 70. People tried to get him into an apartment. Everybody has a certain mental state that they live in that sometimes it's pretty hard to change. And he wanted to live under that bridge. He took care of himself. He didn't bother anybody. And unfortunately, he was hit on his bicycle by a car and killed some years later. But there are still many people, and I deal with these people on a daily basis, people who are drug addicts, who are alcoholics. Oh, and I forgot to say, we need to light a candle for one of the guys that works for me. I think I told you that, went in for an x-ray when he fell and hurt his ribs, and they found out he has spots on his lung. So we're trying to arrange for him to see the cancer doctor. And he, for some reason, went to ED, and they sent him to Kettering Hospital, and I said, you can go here to Greenville, it's a treatment center. So we're trying to get him set up with a local doctor. But this is a person who is probably an alcoholic, who asks every day, at the end of the day, he asks for his money, Cash App. I gotta send money for my child support, or I need gas for my car. He never says I need another six-pack, but I'm suspicious that might be part of it. These people lead disordered lives. They cannot see more than a few hours ahead in the day. If they can make one day's satisfaction, one day's supply of what they need, they're content, and then they go on and face the next day. It is a pretty strange situation, and I have not come up with a solution for treatment of that yet. Hers was true devotion, no different than the homeless of Richmond. So the homeless of Richmond contributed 8 single crumpled dollar bills, which for them would have been a large portion of what they had to spend that day. And I'm sure they spend it on cigarettes, and I'm sure they spend it on alcoholic beverages. But that's part of the mental condition that they live in. It does not make them less of a human being. So when the rich, this is another Mark Twain quote, when the rich rob the poor, it's called business. When the rich rob the poor, it's called business. When the poor fight back, it's called violence. When the poor resist and fight back, it's called violence. So this challenges the many Western narratives about money. Jesus is not asking the flock to give sacrificially for the annual tithing Sunday where you fill out your pledge cards, or to reflect on their own individual giving. Rather, his words seem intended to shame those who would take a widow's last coins. Speaking of which, and that's what I already mentioned, that the Dark County Republicans are having a barbecue and speechifying event at the fairgrounds after church. Attendance is free, as is the food in the oratory. Warren Davidson might even be there, and there is a question that Turning Point might produce or might have a promotion there. I will be attending, curious as to the experience of the Lion's Den, and see if Christian nationalism is in ascendance right here in River City. So, comments and questions? Okay. And where are we? Let's see. Offering. We're going to hear America. As we said at the demonstration, we are patriotic Americans. We support the Constitution. We support the office of the presidency. We don't really want it looking like a gold dealer's haven with gold stuff flashed all over the walls, but we still support the office. hath the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain, as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed, by this we worship and are freed. Always the lyrics, not always, but 90% of the time, the lyrics have a lot of meaning which don't always catch when we're trying to sing them. So, okay, extinguishing the chalice, prayer for a drop in the bucket. Blessed are the droplets, for they shall fill the bucket to overflowing. Blessed are those who know there is a bucket, for they shall be filled with hope. Blessed are they who can see beyond their lifetimes, for they shall walk in faith that their work shall not be in vain. Blessed are we when we know we only appear so small, because what we are creating is so big. Blessed are we who are part of one another. Blessed are we when we give new life and light to others, for we will live more richly ourselves. Blessed be. All right, postlude, O beautiful or spacious skies. America the beautiful, from sea to shining sea, keep that hope. Even though things look bleak and dim, there are still people who support what we believe is the most important tenet in our country, and we will keep working to that. So, we leave a one candle lit as usual for those absent, and we hope to hear from, and also those who are having problems that they cannot solve or cannot resolve. Anything we can do to help them, we will extend a hand. All right, coffee and donuts, that ends our service. And actually, I have to show you I have to get a horse in here somehow, and I have never seen a Saditic Jew riding a horse, so I thought that was worthy of display. I'm assuming this is in Israel, but no idea. It could be in Brooklyn too, because there are parts of Brooklyn that look like Israel. So, all right, coffee and donuts, have a good week. The speakers start at 1 o'clock at the fairgrounds. I don't know what time the meal starts, but I'll head up there about 12:30. So. People would stop and offer him a place to live.
Yeah, yeah,
jobs, all kinds of
yeah.
support. And he was very polite, very nice, but said, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of what's happening to the homeless now with Trump, saying they're going to be put back into institutions, they're going to open up prisons, and put the homeless in prisons if they don't accept the medication and things.
Yeah,
Some of these people, you know, I told people about the thing they're doing in California, in Berkeley, where they offer free housing and free medication and keep the housing up. And a certain percentage of people will take advantage of that and get their way out of homelessness.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people, you know, and that's the trouble with people who are mentally ill, is they refuse to take their meds.
Right.
They refuse to take their meds.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what to do with that, because what Trump says is just open their mouth and jam it down their throat. And I'm not sure that's the answer. But it's only one step from there to what Nazi Germany did, was basically exterminated.
Yeah.
And they had an actual plan. I mean, that's the first people that were killed were the mentally handicapped. And, you know, the people who were terminally ill. They had a euthanasia program, whether you wanted to die or not. If you were dying, they weren't going to spend money on you. That's kind of, it's scary. It's the direction that we're heading.
There's some guy up around Greenville too, that's kind of like that too. He's been like sleeping around the firehouse up there or whatever. And
I haven't heard that. Remember the bridge there on Broad?
Broadway Bridge over there. Yeah.
He said, move all my house.
Yeah.
But they just got scattered.
They were kind of living in the park, in Oakley Park there this summer or whatever, you know.
Well, you can still see them with their shopping carts. You know, those are the homeless. So, I don't have the answer, but I don't think the answer is brute force.
No. There's mental issues there that they just can't seem to get any help mentally.
Well, it takes a concentrated program. It's like that program in California. They had mental health professionals that were paid to go just talk to these people and kind of befriend them and offer them things. And sometimes they don't trust people, so they won't take the meds from them. But if they have somebody they consider a friend, they will go to the doctor, and then maybe they'll start the meds. And once they start the meds, then they're in better shape. And if somebody's checking on them every day to make sure they're taking the meds. But it's kind of a holistic thing where you can't just say, you know, here's a place to live.
Right.
You're taken care of and you're on your own, because they can't be on their own.